CloudDB, shaping your new normal.
Welcome everyone to the 2022 APEC OCI Days by Apaco UC. This is your first year having a dedicated OCI event, and it's your honor and privilege to run this event with the support of 15 Oracle user groups in jugs from the Asia Pacific region. Please remember to register to as many sessions as you can. This way you'll be able to have access to our replays until June 15, 2022. I would like to say thanks to our Oracle user groups and Java user groups that made this event possible, and also to our sponsors, the Oracle ACE community, the DevRel team, and our main sponsors, Oracle Corporation and CloudDB. Now for today's session, CMAN with Traffic Director Mode, TDM, a database connection proxy solution for Oracle environments by Sharad Chandran. Please feel free to ask questions at any time by using the chat window on your right lower corner of your screen, and Sharad will be answering all questions by the end of the presentation. Also, if you have any technical issues during this session, please use the same chat window and I will try to help you the best I can. Now, without any further ado, I leave you with this amazing session by Sharad Chandran.
Hello everyone. Welcome to today's session on configuring Oracle's Connection Manager with Traffic Director mode on Oracle Cloud. My name is Sharad and I'm a product manager in the data access team for Oracle Database, meaning I am one of your technical points of contact for all things related to the Oracle products developed by my team. I am primarily involved in creating and reviewing product features, creating documentation, raising awareness through articles and blogs, interacting and liaising with Oracle development team as well as customers like you to get feedback and to create and generate new features and capabilities for Oracle products, and then do demos and presentations like the one today to evangelize about the great and exciting features of all the products that we have. So moving on to what we have in store for you. So we will look at what is CMAN and what does CMAN TDM mean. And then we will look at the high level architecture of CMAN TDM, including PRCP, which is the pooling feature of CMAN TDM. PRCP stands for Proxy Resident Connection Pooling. Then I will show you through a practical demo how to configure CMAN TDM and PRCP on Oracle Cloud. Finally, we'll look at what are the benefits that are provided by CMAN TDM. So talking about CMAN and CMAN TDM, what is CMAN? Well, Oracle Connection Manager is a database connection proxy used in Oracle deployments. It basically relays client requests onto the database and then relays the database response back to the client. So the client can be anything ranging from an application or a middle tier software or architecture, and CMAN does this relay in a transparent manner. CMAN also acts as a multi-purpose networking solution that brings TLS security, protocol switching capabilities, and session multiplexing features for accessing both remote and local Oracle databases. So CMAN usually resides on a computer separate from the database server and the client computers. Oracle Connection Manager CMAN is available for installation with Oracle Database 21c Enterprise Edition. It is a custom installation option on the client disk. Next, let's look at what is TDM. TDM is an optional intelligent layer added on top of CMAN, which is available from Oracle Client 18c version onwards. It acts as a database proxy for the application and as a client for the database. So this is where the difference between CMAN and CMAN TDM comes in. So CMAN TDM talks to the database as a separate application, as opposed to pure CMAN, which merely transfers the connection and the data between the database and the client once it authenticates the client. So there is no separate connection still being maintained between the client and and CMAN when the authentication is done, whereas that is not the case with CMAN TDM. And also CMAN TDM provides you session multiplexing features through its PRCP capability or proxy resident connection pooling capability, and also provides dynamic load balancing features in addition to the pure CMAN functionality such as the TLS security, protocol switching, and the access control capabilities that we talked about. Session. Now let's take a look at how CMAN TDM works at a higher level. So you have a database server sitting on one machine, then you have CMAN TDM sitting on another machine, then you have multiple applications which can connect through CMAN TDM to the same database. They can request data from the database, and the database can relay the data back through CMAN TDM. Quickly moving to the architecture. So as you can see, this is a high level architecture of how the CMAN TDM instance looks like. Again, like you saw from the previous slide, you have multiple applications connecting through the CMAN TDM instance to multiple database instances. So you can have either a dedicated outbound connection from CMAN TDM instance to the database, or you can have connection pooling or proxy resident connection pooling, which has a host of pooled connections which connect to the database depending on the availability of the connections. So the clients can request a connection to the database through either a dedicated connection or through a proxy resident connection pool. So this is a look at our setup for the demo on the cloud. So what we have is the Oracle Autonomous Database on one server. You have the CMAN TDM service running on a cloud VM machine, and you have SQL Plus also, which you can run on the same machine or on a different machine. For our current demo, we'll run SQL Plus on the same machine due to lack of VMs. So quickly, once we get the CMAN TDM service up and running, SQL Plus application will connect to the database through the CMAN TDM service, and then it will get the data back from the Oracle Autonomous Database. So what are the steps for the demo? So here we assume that you already have created your own Oracle ADB and your own Oracle Cloud VM. What we are going to do is we are going to install the Oracle CMAN and of course CMAN TDM and the SQL Plus client app on the Cloud VM. Then we'll configure the Oracle ADB wallet, which you will have downloaded in your VM generally. So right now we also have one-way TLS where you do not need to download the ADB wallet onto your Cloud VM. But for this purpose, for this demo, we will download it for the sake of continuity. Once we have configured the wallet, we will configure CMAN TDM to connect to the Oracle ADB using the same wallet. Finally, we will connect the SQL Plus application through CMAN TDM to the Oracle ADB. Now let's quickly move to the demo. Okay, quickly moving on to the demo. As you can see here, I have opened my Oracle Cloud account and I have opened the database that I'm going to use. So the name of the database is OCI DB demo. Of course, this is a different instance name, and it has MTLS, mutual TLS enabled. As I told you earlier, one-way TLS also can be enabled for this machine so that you don't have to download the wallet on the client side. But we are going with mutual TLS here. Let me also show you my VM setup. Okay, now I'm in my home page. I'm going to open my VM setup, which is Cloud Linux VM. So the important thing to note here is the public IP address, because we are going to connect through PuTTY to this VM and then use this VM to bring up the CMAN TDM service, and in this VM we are going to connect to the Oracle database. So just to summarize, this is my database and this is my VM instance. Now that my setup is ready, I'm going to connect to my VM instance through PuTTY. Okay, as you can see here, I have now connected to the Linux VM through PuTTY. Now the next step would be to go to the Linux download page and download the Oracle client library with the CMAN package. So what you have to do is to go to the Oracle Database 21C download, and as you can see here, you have the Linux x64 client. So this is the package that you need to download. So there are multiple ways in which you can download it. So what I'll do here is I'll copy the Linux client zip file to my local Windows machine. Then I will use a file transfer application like WinSCP or EP application to transfer it to the Oracle Linux VM machine. So as you can see here, I've already copied the Linux client zip file to the Oracle Linux VM machine. Now the next step is to install the Oracle user. So for that you have to run some commands. So let me quickly copy that. You basically have to run a pre-install setup file in as a root user. Let me pause this while the install is going. Okay, as you can see here, the pre-install package is complete. So this pre-install package is used to install some prerequisite packages and especially the Oracle user to install the Oracle client libraries. Now that the Oracle user is available in your system, let's create a folder where you can store all the client files, relevant client files and binaries. So it seems like I've already created it. So let me make the Oracle user as the owner for this U01 file, where we will store all the Oracle client libraries. Okay, it's done. Now let me go switch to the Oracle user now. Okay, it seems I have switched to the Oracle user, and I'm going to create a folder where I'm going to copy all the binaries for this CMAN that we are going to install. Okay, it is done. Okay, now we are in the home directory of the Oracle user. Let me copy the Linux file and the Linux binary file and install the CMAN now. I have now moved into the staging directory where I will install the CMAN binary. So the staging directory is created here. Next I'll switch back to the root user and copy the Linux binary file zip file from my home directory to the Oracle user home directory. I'll switch to the root user now. I'm going to copy the Linux zip file to the home directory of the Oracle user. Okay, the copy is done. Now let's switch back to the Oracle user and see if you've got the zip file. Yes, we have got the Linux zip file. Now let's unzip it to the staging directory. Okay, now as you can see here, the staging directory has the Linux zip file. Let's quickly unzip it. Okay, now that the binary files have been extracted in the staging file, we need to create a response file to for the installer to be configured and start installing the client with CMAN. So let's go back to the home directory and then create a install response file. By the way, all these instructions are available in my blog, which I will provide at the end of this presentation. As you can see here, the response file, which is client21.rsp, has been created. this in the response file you will notice two things, that we are planning to install CMAN and we are also planning to install SQL Plus. So if you do not want to install either one of these components, you're free to remove it, but the network component and the network listener is mandatory whether you're installing SQL Plus or CMAN. Now that the response file is installed, let's start running the installer. The installer, like I said earlier, is present in the stage folder. So it is present inside client folder. So as you can see here, you have the run installer. So that will help you create, install CMAN in this machine. Oops. The installer is now running. You have to give the full path of the run installer and then give all these options along with the response file that you have created. Okay, as you can see, the installation is complete here. Now we just have one more step. We have to install certain other config files as the root user. So I'm going to exit from the Oracle user and then I'm going to run a few config files to complete the installation. Okay, both the root script installations for the CMAN installation for CMAN is done. Now let's go back to the Oracle user and let's go and check the U01 directory. As you can see here, the Oracle binaries are installed along with the root binaries, as well. Now you can see here in the U01 folder, the CMAN binaries are installed. So what we have to do is for the config files sqlnet.ora, cmannet.ora and tnsnames.ora, we have to make sure that they are present in the network admin folder. So let's navigate to that. So as you can see here, we have the samples folder where you will have a sample cman.ora file. In the next portion, we will create a cman.ora file and the required wallet files to run the CMAN app. In the meantime, we will have let's set all the environment variables. First, we have to set the Oracle home environment variable. Next, we have to set the LD library path for the CMAN libraries. And finally, we have to add the binaries of CMAN to the path variable. Now that is set, your CMAN environment is ready. The next step is to configure your CMAN files and its associated wallet files, and then we are ready to go. Oh, in the meantime, let's check if SQL Plus and CMAN is actually installed. Let's quickly run SQL Plus. Yes, SQL Plus 21 version is installed. And similarly, let's run CMCTL, which is the command line utility. As you can see, CMAN is also installed. So our next step would be to configure CMAN connect to the Oracle database. Okay, so the next step is to configure the ADB wallet file. So as you can see on the screen here, I am back in my cloud console, and I need to download the wallet for the ADB from the cloud console. So I just download the wallet to my local machine, and then I transfer it to the CMAN TDM or Linux machine. I transfer it using the file transfer application like in SCP that I've used earlier. As you can see on the screen, I've already completed the transfer to my Linux machine. So next what I have to do is to copy this wallet to the Oracle user. So let's switch to the Oracle user. So before we talk about the wallet, a quick tip here. So if you remember, we have to set a bunch of environment variables for running the CMAN TDM or CMAN. So the best practice would be to ensure that these environment variables are already set when you switch to the Oracle user. You can do that by setting it in the bash profile file, which is a hidden file for Linux, which automatically sets the environment for any user. So as you can see here, I have set all the relevant Oracle related or CMAN related environment variables here. Okay, let me quickly copy the ADB wallet file and extract it to the TNS admin folder, because we need to ensure that the CMAN Aura file picks up the wallet files from the TNS admin folder. I have now copied all the wallet files into the TNS admin folder. They are actually present in the wallet _tm subdirectory under TNS admin directory. So let me quickly switch that and show you all the wallet files. So as you can see here, all the wallet files have been extracted. The next step is to configure the cman.aura and the other network configuration files. Now we are back in the TNS_admin folder. Note that you can set the TNS admin folder or directory to any directory that you like. In my case, it is set to U01 app Oracle network admin /in. So let's look at the CMAN, all the configuration files. Of course, we start off with the main cman.aura file, which is the main configuration file, which is read by CMAN TDM. Let me go into that. So I have copied, or I have set all the parameters for connecting to the database already. So here, as you can see, I've used the ifile notation. The reason we use ifile is that multiple CMAN TDM configurations can be managed in the same host without editing cman.aura directly. So multiple CMAN TDM config files for different instances can be referred to within the cman.aura file using the ifile parameter. You can see that this ifile parameter points to another file, CMAN test.aura, which has all the configuration details. So let's quickly go to that. CMAN test.aura, I have kept it in the same folder, by the way. So as you can see here, all the configuration details are available. I have set them already. Let's go through them one by one. So CMAN test is the CMAN TDM instance name. So it is the name that is used whenever we want to start this CMAN service or stop the CMAN service in the CMAN machine. The address parameter contains the host name, protocol of the CMAN TDM server, and the port number of the CMAN TDM server. So as you can see, the host name is the current host name, and port number is 1523. You can choose any available port number on your Linux machine. and you have to also ensure that the port number is open on I will probably give the command on how to open the port number later. The next important parameter is to set the TDM parameter. So the TDM parameter is to be set to true here, is to enable TDM. So far we have been setting CMAN. Once you set the TDM parameter equal to true, it becomes a CMAN TDM service. Then you can set the threading mode. By default the threading mode is taken as dedicated. You can also set the threading mode to shared to ensure that the processes can be shared across multiple incoming connections from the client. So this shared mode is especially useful for multiplexing requirements. The next important parameter is the next hop parameter. So the next hop parameter is used to point to the address details of the autonomous database along with the SSL details. So this next hop is very useful, especially when you're connecting to Oracle database, which has which does not have a remote listener. So if you have a remote listener or a local database, you do not need to use this next hop. But since we are connecting to a remote Oracle Cloud database, next hop is required to point to the address details of the ADB or autonomous database. The client application generally connects to the CMAN process through the TCP protocol, and CMAN connects to the ADB through the TCPS protocol, which is why you see this security parameter and the SSL server cert parameter given here. The other config parameters in CMAN test.ora, such as max connections, max gateway, can be set according to your performance requirements. The log level and the trace level parameters can be set to enable the required level of tracing that you need especially for testing and debugging purposes. And we can use final note is that we can use CMAN.ora file only to provide the complete configuration detail instead of the separate configuration file that I've used here. However, you will have to change this configuration in CMAN.ora for each separate instance, so CMAN TDM instance that you create. That is why we are following this approach. We also have the other network configuration files here, such as the sqlnet.ora file and the tnsname.ora file. This is especially useful when you for the SQL Plus app that we have installed, which will look at the TNS admin folder to connect to the Oracle ADB. So let's quickly take a look at them as well. As you can see here, I have set the wallet location to connect to the Oracle ADB in sqlnet.ora. This is primarily for the SQL Plus application. And let's take a look at the tnsnames.ora. So the tnsnames.ora file has all the database details. Also note that we have two database details, one for the connecting through the TDM. As you can see, the port number and the host is different because it connects to the TDM. And the second TNS name or TNS alias is to connect to the CMAN TDM through PRCP, which is why it has this pooled server equal to pooled at the end. So just a quick tip on that. So all these parameters have to be configured for us to have a proper connection through the CMAN TDM to the Oracle database. Next, let's take a look at how to create what user we need to create to connect from CMAN TDM to the Oracle database, and also to connect from the client to the CMAN TDM. The next step is to create the admin user in the database. I've already created, so let me just log in as the admin user. So you can create the admin user by using create user TDM identified by some password. Since I've already created it, I'll show you the user that has been created. As you can see, the TDM admin TDM user has already been created, and I've also granted the create session capability to the TDM user. This is necessary for the TDM user to connect to the database and retrieve data. So I grant the create session capability to this command, grant create session.tdm. Create session grants a create session to TDM. As you can see, the grant has been succeeded, and now the next step is to create the application user which can connect from the client to CMAN TDM. To create the application user, I have a hack script called createuser.sql, which can create the user with all the required roles and privileges. Let's quickly take a look at the hack script called createuser.sql. As you can see here, it allows you to create the username and then allocate table space and quota to the username. In addition to that, it will allocate all the required privileges for the application user that we're going to create. With that, let me again log in as the admin user. Now I'm going to run the script that we created. And I'm going to create a username called Raju, which is my username at Oracle. So let me run it quickly. Okay, the user Raju has been created. Just to confirm it, let me look at the all users table. As you can see here, the Raju user has been created.
Hello, can you hear me, Francisco?
Yes, Sharad, I can.
Okay, so folks, let me continue from where I left. So now that we have created the application user, we need to create a wallet for the CMAN TDM to connect to the database using the TDM user. So quickly, let me do that. I've already done it. I'll give you the command on how to do it. So what you need to do next is to navigate to the ADB wallet folder. So since we already have a wallet folder created by the cloud, we need to navigate to that ADB wallet folder and then add the TDM users credentials to the ADB wallet. So let me navigate quickly. My wallet folder, like I told in the earlier recorded session, it is present in the wallet_tdm directory. Show it for you. So here what we need to do is we need to run this mkstore command. So mkstore is a utility which is available with any Oracle Linux installation or any Oracle prerequisite installation, which can be used to create or update wallets. So let me quickly show you the command. So as you can see here in the command, what we do is that we provide the database service credentials and also the TDM user credentials and add it to the wallet, and the CMAN TDM will pick up the TDM and the database service credentials from this wallet location based on the configuration in the cman.ora file, or in this case the cman-text.ora file. So I have already run this and I've already added my credentials to the wallet. So in order to verify that everything is available, what you need to do is to run this command called list credential, mkstore list credential. So quickly running it. as you can see here, my TDM user and the database service and the other credentials has been added. So for now, our configuration and setup is ready. One final setup that I might have missed is that you need to open up the CMAN TDM port. So generally what you do is you go to the root user. So in my case, I'll go to the root user, and in the root user, what you do is you run the following two commands. First, you run the, sorry, my apologies. First, you run the firewall cmd command, like you see over here, and then you run a reload command, firewall cmd reload command again. So once you run these two commands, your CMAN TDM port will open up to the internet. So this is another essential step. So now that we have done all the configuration, let me go back to my Oracle user. One step that we need to check is we need to check the tns names.ora file so that the SQL Plus is able to connect to the CMAN TDM. Let's quickly look at the tns names.ora file. As I told you earlier, the OCI DB demo high CMAN TDM is the TNS alias to connect to the CMAN TDM machine service, CMAN TDM service in the same machine. And we'll come to this later. This is used to connect through PRCP to the same CMAN TDM service. So all our configuration is ready. Now to run the now to start the CMAN TDM service, we need to give the following command: CMAN CTL -startup cmctl startup -c and the name of the CMAN instance, which I told earlier. So your CMAN TDM service is getting started. It should be up in about a second. Okay, now it is done. Now all we need to do is to connect through the CMAN TDM service using the TNS alias, and let's see if we are able to do that. Since I've already run this multiple times, let me pick it up quickly. I'm going, as you can see here, I'm going to select it. I'm going to run an SQL Plus call on the application user and through the CMAN TDM service. As you can see here, I'm able to connect through SQL Plus to CMAN TDM, and through CMAN TDM, I'm able to connect to the database. The actual clue is this particular word in the banner, which says connected via Oracle Connection Manager in Traffic Director mode. This will tell you that you're able to connect successfully through CMAN TDM. So to verify, let's quickly run some sample SQL. So there you go. We are able to connect through CMAN TDM. Now, another thing which I quickly wanted to show was how do you connect through PRCP. So let us shut down the CMAN TDM service first. This is the command used for shutting down the CMAN TDM service. Now let me show you something called auraccess.xml. So auraccess.xml is an XML file which is used to configure for your PRCP connection. So the main thing to note here is that you have to enable this event equal to true. And also the other thing to note is that you have to set the config alias to the same name as you have set for the that you have set in the TNS names.ora entry. And also the connection string should contain the database service name, and the config alias should again contain the TNS alias that you've set for the in the TNS names.ora. This is important. Otherwise, the PRCP may not run. So please keep all this in mind. Now I'm going to quickly run, since I've already one more thing I wanted to show in configuration that I wanted to show in the CMAN test.ora file are these two configurations, that is the TDM PRCP max call wait time and TDM PRCP. So these parameters need to be set, and they will come into effect once you're trying to connect through PRCP. So they are basically used to set the wait timings for any transaction or wait timings to connect through PRCP to the database. Okay, let me quickly run it again. This time I'm going to connect to the pooled TNS alias. Oops, I think I forgot to start the database. I think I forgot to start CMAN TDM. That is why you're seeing this hand. Okay, probably let's try to connect to it later. I'll show it to you later. I just want to go through the benefits of CMAN TDM, and yeah, okay, we are able to connect it. Let me quickly start up the CMAN TDM again. Service again. Okay, now hopefully we should be able to connect through the pool connection. Yep, there you go. We are able to connect to PRCP as well to the pool connection. Okay, so that probably concludes our practical demo on how to connect both CMAN TDM and PRCP through to an Oracle autonomous database. Let me quickly share my screen again, where I want to just quickly discuss the benefits and of course the use case which one of our attendees asked for. Okay, talking about benefits of CMAN TDM. So what are the benefits that you have in CMAN TDM? Well, you can bring in intelligence and resiliency through the transparent high availability feature support, which can be used for planned maintenance. So when I say high availability, you can CMAN TDM supports application continuity, TAC, TAF, FAN, etc. So suppose you have a multi-node database at the backend or a rack cluster at the backend. CMAN TDM is very useful in that use case scenario. Especially when one of the databases goes down, and if you want a continuity, CMAN TDM can provide that abstraction from the database layer, and you can connect seamlessly to multiple databases without the application being aware of the database status at the backend. The second benefit is the security benefit. So CMAN TDM provides enhanced security features on the cloud, such as denial of service protection and fuzzing attack protection. It also provides tenant isolation. It also provides interoperability between mixed versions. So it allows old client applications to use the latest database features, and the client applications do not need an application driver upgrade or a code rewrite. Then it also gives great performance tuning capabilities through row prefetching, statement caching, and client result caching to enable optimal data access and processing. Finally, it provides improved scalability for applications using its session multiplexing features that I told you about with respect to PRCP and dynamic load balancing. So these scalability features can optimize the usage of database resources and allow access to all types of Oracle database and deployments. So I hope that answered your question, Jim, regarding some of the benefits and use cases that CMAN TDM provides. So with that, I conclude my presentation. These are my contact details, and please make sure to check out the blog. I will share the PPT with Francisco, and where you have the blog link. The blog has much more details on how to connect to the Oracle database through Oracle CMAN TDM, and also there, please do check out the CMAN TDM white paper which we have released recently, which is even more detailed and talks about other parameters that you can include in cman.ora file, which can even fine-tune the performance of the PRCP connection or CMAN TDM connections. With that, this concludes my presentation. I hope everybody found it useful. Thank you. Thank you for all your support.
Thank you so much, Sharad. If anyone has anything coming through the Facebook streaming, and let me just check right now. Nope, nothing yet. If anyone has any questions, please remember to post them in the chat window. In the meantime, if there's no more questions, I would like to say thank you so much to Sharad for another excellent presentation, as always. Thank you for taking the time to present to the Asia Pacific and now the global community and share your knowledge and experience. If anyone has any questions that you want to do offline, or if you're watching the replay of this session, please feel free to contact Sharad directly, or you can get in contact with me and I can forward all your questions to Sharad. Yes, no questions came through. In that case, Sharad, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Please, I hope you continue enjoying the sessions during the rest of this evening, tomorrow, and after tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, and please take care. Thank you, Sharad, again.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.